Hello again, Year 5. You ready for the next chapter of our story? You'll recall last time that Tiffany had went with the Knack McFeagle to where they live, under the bushes, under the thorns, and she was about to meet their Kelda. She had to get down and crawl in to meet the Kelda, who's their queen. But now we'll see what happens. Chapter 7. First Sight and Second Thoughts. Glint, glisten, glitter, gleam. Tiffany thought a lot about words in the long hours of churning butter. Onomatopoeic, she discovered in the dictionary, meant words that sounded like the noise of the thing that they were describing, like cuckoo. But she thought there should be a word meaning a word that sounds like the noise a thing would make if that thing made a noise, even though actually it doesn't, but would if it did. Glint, for example. If light made a noise as it reflected off a distant window, it would go glint. And the light of tinsel, all those little glints chiming together, would make a noise like glitter, glitter. Gleam was a clean, smooth noise from a surface that intended to shine all day, and glisten was the soft, almost greasy sound of something rich and oily. The little cave contained all of these at once. There was only one candle, which smelled of sheep fat, and gold plates and cups gleamed, glistened, and glinted, and they glittered in the light back and forth until the one little flame filled the air with a light that even smelled expensive. The gold surrounded the bed of the Kelda, who was sitting up against a pile of pillows. She was much, much fatter than the male pixies. She looked as if she'd been made of round balls of slightly squashy dough and was the colour of chestnuts. Her eyes were closed as Tiffany slid in, but they flicked open the moment she'd stopped pulling herself forward. They were the sharpest eyes she'd ever seen, much sharper even than Miss Tick's. So, you'll be Sarah Aiken's wee girl, said the Kelda. Yes, I, said Tiffany. It wasn't very comfortable lying on her stomach. And you're the Kelda. Yes, said the Kelda, and the round face became a mass of lines as the Kelda smiled. What was your name now? Tiffany, Kelda. Fionn had turned up from some other part of the cave and was sitting down on a stool by the bed, watching Tiffany intently with a disapproving expression. A good name. In our tongue, you'd be Tirfar Toyan, land under wave, said the Kelda. It sounded like Tiffin. I don't think anyone meant to name Ak. What people do and what is done are two different things, said the Kelda. Her little eyes shone. Your wee brother is safe, child. You could say he's safer where he is now than he ever has been. No mortal ills can touch him. The Quinn would nae harm a hair on his head, and there's the evil o' it. Help me up here, girl. Fionn leapt up immediately and helped the Kelda struggle to her higher amongst her cushions. Where was I? The Kelda continued. The wee laddie. You could say he bides well where he is, in the Quinn's own country, but I dare say there's a mother grieving. And his father too, said Tiffany. And his wee sister? Asked the Kelda. Tiffany felt the words, yes, of course, trot out automatically onto her tongue. She also knew that it would be very stupid to let them go any further. The little old woman's dark eyes were seeing right into her head. You're born a hag right enough, said the Kelda, holding her gaze. You've got that little bitty bit inside of you that holds, right? The bitty bit that watches the rest of you. 'Tis the first sight and the second thoughts you have, and 'tis a wee gift and a big curse to you. You see and hear what others canna. The world opens up its secrets to you, but you're always like the person at the party with the wee drink in the corner who canna join in. There's a little bitty bit inside ye that will nae melt and flow. You're Sarah Aiken's line right enough. The lads fetched the right one. Tiffany didn't know what to say to that, so she didn't say anything. The Kelda watched her, eyes twinkling, until Tiffany felt awkward. Why would the Queen take my brother? She asked eventually. And why is she after me? You think she is? Well, yes, actually. I mean, Jenny might have been a coincidence, but the horseman and the Grimhounds and taking Wentworth, she's bending her mind to you, said the Kelda. When she does, something of her world passes into this one. Maybe she just wants to test you. Test me? To see how good you are. You're the hag now, the witch that guards the edges of the gateways. So was your granny, although she wouldn't ever call herself one. And so was I until now, and I'll pass the duty to you. She'll have to get past you if she wants this land. You have the first sight and the second thoughts, just like your granny. That's rare in a big job. Don't you mean second sight? Tiffany's queried. Like people who can see ghosts and stuff? No. That's typical big job thinking. First sight is when you can see what's really there, not what your head tells you ought to be there. You saw Jenny, you saw the horseman, you saw them as real thingies. Second sight is dull sight. It sees only what you expect to see. Most big jobs have that. Listen to me, because I'm fading now, and there's a lot you dinna ken. You think this is the only world? That is a good thought for sheep and mortals who dinna open their eyes, because in truth there are more worlds than stars in the sky. Understand? They are everywhere, big and small, close as your skin. They are everywhere. Some you can see and some you canna, but there are doors, Tiffin. There might be a hill or a tree or a stone or a turn in the road, or there might be even be a thought in your head, but they are all there, all around you. You'll have to learn to see them because you walk amongst them and you didn't know it, and some of them is poisonous. The Kelda stared at Tiffany for a moment and then continued. You asked why the Queen should take your brother. The Queen likes children. She has none of her own. She dotes on them. She'll give the wee boy everything he wants to. Only what he wants. He only wants sweets, said Tiffany. Is that so? And did you give him to him? Said the Kelda, as if she was looking into Tiffany's mind. But what he needs is love and care and teaching and people saying no to him sometimes and things of that nature. He needs to be growed up strong. He will not get that for the Queen. He'll get sweeties forever. Tiffany wished the Kelda would stop looking at her like that. But I see he has a sister willing to take any pains to bring him back, said the little old woman, taking her eyes away from Tiffany. What a lucky wee boy he is to be so fortunate. You ken how to be strong, do you? Yes, I think so. Good. Do you ken how to be weak? Can you bow to the gale? Can you bend to the storm? The Kelda smiled again. Nay, you needn't answer that. The wee birdie always has to leap from the nest to see if it can fly. Anyway, you have the feel of Sarah aching about you, and no word, even of mine, could turn her once she's had set her mind to something. You're no a woman yet, and that's no bad thing, because where you'll be going, it's easy for children, hard for adults. The world of the Queen, ventured Tiffany, trying to keep up. Aye, I can feel it now, lying over this one like a fog, as far away as the other side of a mirror. I'm weakening, Tiffin. I can't defend this place, so here is my bargain, child. I'll point you towards the Queen, and then in return, you'll take over as Kelda. That surprised Fionn as much as Tiffany. Her head shot up sharply and her mouth opened, but the Kelda had raised a wrinkled hand. When you are a Kelda somewhere, my girl, you'll expect people to do your bidding. So dinna give me the argument. That's my offer, Tiffin. You won't get a better. But she canny, Fionn began. Can she not? Said the Kelda. She's nae a pixie, mother. She's a bit on the large size, aye, said the Kelda. Dinna fret, Tiffin, it will nae be long. I just need you to mind things for a wee while. Mind the land like your granny did, and mind my boys. Then when your wee boy's back home, Hamish will fly up to the mountains and let it be known that Chalk Hill clan has won to a Kelda. We've got a good place here, and the girls will come flocking. What do you say? She doesn't know our ways, Fionn protested. You're overtired, mother. Aye, I am, said the Kelda. But a daughter can't run her mother's clan, you know that. You're a dutiful girl, Fionn, but it's time you were picking your bodyguard and going away seeking a clan of your own. You can't stay here. The Kelda looked up at Tiffany again. Will ye, Tiffin? She held up a thumb the size of a match head and waited. What will I have to do? Asked Tiffany. The thinking, said the Kelda, still holding up her thumb. My lads are good lads. There's none braver, but they think their heads most useful as weapon. That's lads for you. We pixies aren't like you big folk, you ken. You have many sisters. Fionn here has none. She's my only daughter. A Kelda might be blessed with only one daughter in her whole life, but she'll have hundreds and hundreds of sons. They're all your sons? Said Tiffany, aghast. Oh, aye, said the Kelda, smiling, except for a few of my brothers who travelled here with me when I came to be Kelda. Oh, don't he look so astonished. The bairns are really wee when they're born, like little peas in a pod, and they grow up fast. She sighed. But sometimes I think all the brains is saved for the daughters. They're good boys, but they're no great thinkers. You'll have to help them, help you. Mother, she can't carry out the duties of a Kelda, Fionn protested. I don't see why not, if they're explained to me. Said Tiffany. Oh, do you not? Said Fionn sharply. Well, that's going to be most interesting. I recall Sarah Aiken talking about you, said the Kelda. She said you were a strange wee one, always watching and listening. She said you had the head full of words, and you never spoke aloud. She wondered what had become of you. Time for you to find out, aye? Aware of Fionn glaring at her, and maybe because of Fionn glaring at her, Tiffany licked her thumb and touched it gently against the Kelda's tiny thumb. It's done then, said the Kelda. She lay back suddenly, and just as suddenly seemed to shrink. There were more lines in her face now. Never let it be said that I left my sons without a Kelda to mind them, she muttered. Now I can go back to the last world. Tiffin is the Kelda for now, Fionn. In her house, you'll do what she says. Fionn looked down at her feet. Tiffany could see that she was angry. The Kelda sagged. She beckoned Tiffany closer and in a weaker voice said, There, 'tis done. And now for my part of the bargain. Listen. Find the place where the time doesn't fit. There's the way in. It'll shine out to you. Bring him back to ease your poor mother's heart and maybe also your own head. Her voice faltered and Fionn leaned quickly towards the bed. The Kelda sniffed. She opened one eye. Not quite yet, she murmured to Fionn. Do I smell a wee drop of special sheep liniment on you, Kelda? Tiffany looked puzzled for a moment and then said, Oh, me? Yes, here. The Kelda struggled to sit up again. The best thing humans ever made, she said. I'll just have a large wee drop, Fionn. It puts hairs on your chest, Tiffany warned. Ack, well, a drop of Sarah Aiken's special sheep liniment. I'll risk a curl or two, said the old Kelda. She took from Fionn a leather cup about the size of a thimble and held it up. I didn't think it would be good for you, mother, said Fionn. I'll be the judge of that this time, said the Kelda. One drop before I go, please, Kelda Tiffin. Tiffany tipped the bottle slightly. The Kelda shook the cup irritably. It was a larger drop that I had in mind, Kelda, she said. Kelda has a generous heart. She took something too small to be a gulp, but too large to be a sip. Aye, it's a long time since I tasted this brose, she said. Your granny and I used to have a sip or two in front of the fire on cold nights. Tiffany saw it clearly in her head. Granny Aiken and this little fat woman sitting around the pot-bellied stove in the hut on wheels, while the sheep grazed under the stars. Aye, you can see it, said the Kelda. I could feel your eyes on me. That's the first sight working. She lowered the cup. Fionn, go and fetch Rob anybody, and William the Gonigal. The big job is blocking the hole, said Fionn sulkily. I dare say there's room to wiggle past, said the old Kelda, in the kind of calm voice that said a stormy voice could follow if people didn't do what they were told. With a smouldering glance at Tiffany, Fionn squeezed past. You ken anyone who keeps bees, said the Kelda. When Tiffany nodded, the little old woman went on. Then you'll know why you dinna have many daughters. You canna hide two queens in one hive without a big fight. Fionn must take her pick of them that will follow her and seek a clan that needs a Kelda. That is our way. She thinks there's another way, as girls do sometimes. Be careful o' her." Tiffany felt something move past her, and Rob Anybody and the Bard came into the room. There was more rustling and whispering too. An unofficial audience was gathering outside. When things had settled down a little, the old Kelda said, "It is a bad thing for a clan to be left without a Kelda to watch over them, even for an hour. So Tiffan will be your Kelda until a new one can be fetched." There was a murmur beside and behind Tiffany. The old Kelda looked at William the Gonigal. "Am I right that this has been done before?" she said. "Aye, the songs say twice before," said William. He frowned and added, "Or you could say it was 3 times, if you include the time when the Queen was—" He was drowned out by the cry that went up behind Tiffany. "Nae Queen, nae King, nae Laird, nae Master, we will nae be fooled again." The old Kelda raised a hand. Tiffin is the spawn of Granny Aiken," she said. "You all ken of her?" "Aye, and you saw the wee hag stare the heedless horseman in the eyes. The eyes he hasn't got," said Rob Anybody. "Not many folk can do that." "And I have been your Kelda for 70 years, and my words cannae be gainsaid," said the old Kelda. "So the choice is made. I tell you, too, that you'll help her steal back her wee baby brother. That is the fate I lay on all of you in memory of me and Sarah Aiken." She lay back in her bed, and in a quieter voice added, "And now I would have the Gonigal play the Bonny Flowers, and hope to see us all again in the last world. To Tiffin I say, be wary." The Kelda took a deep breath. "Somewhere, stories are real and songs are true." The old Kelda fell silent. William the Gonigal inflated the bag of his mouse pipes and blew into one of the tubes. Tiffany felt the bubbling in her ears of music too high-pitched to hear. After a few moments, Fionn leaned over the bed to look at her mother and started to cry. Rob Anybody turned and looked up at Tiffany, his eyes running with tears. "Could I ask you to go out into the big chamber, Kelda?" he said. "We have things to do. You ken how it is." Tiffany nodded, and with great care, feeling the pixies scuttle out of her way, backed out of the room. She found a corner where she didn't seem to be in anyone's way and sat there with her back to the wall. She expected a lot of "Wally, Wally, Wally," but it seemed the death of the Kelda was too serious for that. Some Feagles were crying, and some were staring at nothing, and as the news spread, the tiered hall filled up with a wretched, sobbing silence. The hills had been silent on the day Granny Aiken died. Someone went up every day with fresh bread and milk and scraps for the dogs. It didn't need to be quite so often, but Tiffany had heard her parents talking, and her father had said, "We ought to keep an eye on Mam now." Today had been Tiffany's turn, but she'd never thought of it as a chore. She liked the journey. But she'd noticed the silence. It was no longer the silence of many little noises, but a dome of quiet all around the hut. She knew then, even before she went in at the open door and found Granny lying on the narrow bed. She felt coldness spread through her. It even had a sound. It was like a thin, sharp musical note. It had a voice too, her own voice. It was saying, "It's too late. Tears are no good. No time to say anything. There are things to be done." And then she fed the dogs, who were waiting patiently for their breakfast. It would have helped if they'd done something soppy, like whine or lick Granny's face, but they hadn't, and Tiffany heard the voice in her mind. "No tears. Don't cry. Don't cry for Granny Aiken." Now, in her head, she watched the slightly smaller Tiffany move around the hut like a little puppet. She tidied up the shed. Besides the bed and the stove, there really wasn't much there. There was the clothes sack, and the big water barrel, and the food box, and that was it. Oh, stuff to do with sheep all over the place. Pots, bottles, sacks, knives and shears, but there was nothing there that said a person lived here, unless you counted the hundreds of blue and yellow Jolly Sailor wrappers pinned on one wall. She'd taken one of them down. It was still underneath her mattress at home, and she remembered the story. It was very unusual for Granny Aiken to say more than a sentence. She used words as if they cost money, but there'd been one day when she'd taken food up to the hut and Granny had told her a story. A sort of story. She'd unwrapped the tobacco and looked at the wrapper, and then looked at Tiffany with that slightly puzzled look she used and said, I must have looked 1,000 of these things, and I've never once saw his boat. That was how she pronounced boat. Boat. Of course, Tiffany had rushed to have a look at this label, but she couldn't see any boat, any more than she could see the naked lady. That's 'cause the boat is just where you can't see it, Granny had said. He's got a boat for chasing the great white whale fish on the salt sea. He's always chasing it, all around the world. It's called Mopey. It's a beast like a big cliff of chalk, I heard tell in a book. Why's she chasing it? Tiffany had asked. Why's he chasing it? To catch it, Granny said. But he will never. The reason being, the world is round like a big plate, and so is the sea, and so they're chasing one another, so it's almost like he's chasing himself. You never want to go to sea, Jiggit. That's where worse things happen. Everyone says that. You stop along here, where the hills is in your bones. And that was it. It was one of the very few times Granny Aching had ever said anything to Tiffany that wasn't, in some way, about sheep. It was the only time she ever acknowledged that there was a world beyond the chalk. Tiffany used to dream about the jolly sailor chasing the whalefish in his boat, and sometimes the whalefish would chase her, but the jolly sailor always arrived in his mighty ship just in time, and their chase would start again. Sometimes she'd run into a lighthouse and wake up as the door swung open. She'd never seen the sea, but one of the neighbours had an old picture on the wall that showed a lot of men clinging to a raft in what looked like a huge lake full of waves. She hadn't been able to see the lighthouse at all. And Tiffany had sat by the narrow bed and thought about Granny Aching, and about the little girl Sarah Grizel must very carefully painting the flowers in the book, about the world losing its centre. She missed the silence. What there was now wasn't the same kind of silence there had been before. Granny's silence was warm and brought you inside. Granny Aching might sometimes have had trouble remembering the difference between children and lambs, but in her silence you were welcome and belonged. All you had to bring was a silence of your own. Tiffany wished that she had a chance to say sorry about the shepherdess. Then she'd gone home and told everyone that Granny Aching was dead. She was 7 and the world had ended. And that's where we're going to leave it for today. This isn't the end of the chapter, but it is a very long chapter. So we'll pick up the rest of it next time. Quite sad, that bit, wasn't it? Both the Kelda and the story about how Granny Aching died. But I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come back next time to read the rest of it with me. Take care, guys. I'll see you again. Bye.